And, Corry, right before commercial break, we were talking about, or you were getting ready to talk about, I should say, about Janet. How did you meet your wonderful wife, beautiful wife, Janet?
It was New Year's Eve, 1981. My partner and I had just sold a house we had fixed up, and we stopped at the new bar of the Marriott Hotel in South Denver. And just to have a drink, New Year's Eve, nobody was there except this lovely, magnificent apparition of loveliness across the bar, and wearing a tan, long riding coat with black silk stockings and black high heels, and a purple blouse with purple earrings to match. At first, I thought it was an act of lust, but I realized I really fell in love, of which we have now been going through 30 years of this circumstance. Anyway, she looked across at me, and I, not knowing, she had the same consideration. So she's with this black hat Stetson cowboy, which incidentally, his name was Joe Ferris, a Greek, and he was the first cowboy on a horse for the Marlboro magazine, the ad for magazine
the Marlboro
many years ago. And the reason why he wouldn't take off his hat is because he was completely bald, and the only one he'd ever take a photo was for Janet. Well, she was there with his wife and son. They start talking about commodities. Shit, I couldn't spell the thing. So I saw this lovely thing, so, oh really? Well, I'd be interested in that. So she comes around and gives me her card, and 4 months later, I'm in Pueblo rebuilding an office building, and she's working for Smith Barney as a commodity broker. She was actually the first licensed commodity broker in the United States. And so I call her, and she, well, I have the sniffles, but okay. So I go pick her up. I have a little 450 Mercedes convertible, powder blue convertible. I was in a Chapter 11, and I pulled up there, and actually at the time it was the highest priced car on the American market, with $33,000. It was in 1979. And so I go up the door, take her out to the car. She had long legs. I says, couldn't you get anything bigger or more expensive? I said, honey, this is the most expensive. I'm going to take her back. So I went over to the wine and jug, and we sat there waiting for a table, and we were having cheese and wine, and all of a sudden I feel this hand inching up my leg. And she said, I don't really need dinner. And so I said, why don't we just come back to my house? So I said, well, okay, fine, why not? And so we went back, and I was going to give her a kiss goodnight, and tell her I'd meet her again when I'm back in Pueblo. And all of a sudden she said, well, you can come in, but you got to be quiet, because my daughter is sleeping with a boyfriend who is now a husband to her with 2 grandchildren, and we just had our first great-granddaughter from this relationship. So we went through, and here's this red round bed, velvet covers, red drapes, black carpeting. And I said, this looks like a house of something. But anyway,
House of
made
beautiful elegance
love on all points of the compass on this round bed that evening. And since then, we've been married 30 years, which we just celebrated our 30th wedding. But I'm going to give the folks a thought, because 50% of the United States and many other places have been divorced in some form or fashion or separated. But because we've been apart a good third of that 30 years, what happened is when you get ticked off at your spouse, you say, immediately, I'm going to divorce you, or I'm going to get away. But if you take time to realize that there ain't anybody out there as good as the relationship you have right there with that person today. So after 3 or 4 months, she'd get horny. I mean, she'd
dear Lord.
She'd get,
Bleep.
yeah. wanting to come
Missing
back
you.
to me.
Missing
and
you.
I want her to come back to me. So we did that over the years. And like I say, we have 7 children, 13 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. And so she had to go into a chapter 7 because her husband left her with a big $150,000. I went into a chapter 11. One minute I was worth $3.7 million. The next minute I paid off $2.2 million in 2 years with all the banks.
Wow.
And I had less than $50,000. And one bank gave me $25,000 in exchange for 2 Mercedes convertibles, 48 electric meters, 3 50-acre tracts of a 2,000-acre subdivision, and a 7-foot Gazo clock. Like I told you before, I'm a trader. I'll trade anything. I'm a dream merchant. I'll trade whatever. So we had the $25,000. We have a 78 double cab truck pickup, and I've got a 5-inch gold dredge in it, and because we go dredge for sand. And I had 700 pairs of earrings, which I was going to trade to the natives.
700 pairs of earrings.
Earrings, yeah. And let's see, what else? I had 14 Kachina dolls because I had a bar in Castle Rock, Colorado, so I trade my bar signs for 80 pounds of gold, not gold, but iron pyrite. That looks like
Pyrite.
And so trading in different things. But when we got to McAllen, Texas, my brother said, do not go across the border by yourself. Well, Janet had been there before, so what happens? At 11 o'clock at night, here's our truck out in front of the hotel. At 6 o'clock the next morning, there's a vacant spot. Now remember, I'm in a chapter 11. I just got out of it. I cannot have a credit card because at that time they said, well, even though you paid off everything, you have no credit card. I had changed all my U.S. money into pesos. The reason why I'm telling you this is that for the folks out there, they might have to think of some similar circumstance they have. But remember this, if you have the fortitude and you and your spouse work together, you can do anything in life if you really want to. So anyway, I cried and I sent Janet back to Denver when 3 days later I went back to Belize to get my brother to give me some money. So anyway, 3 days later, the police in Kingsville, Texas, say we got this body in the morgue and we got this black suitcase full of gold iron pyrites and traveler's checks where they had taken out one, and we get back to you. So the police go to Denver. They think Janet's dead. So Janet and I get back together. We meet in Houston. We go down to Kingsville, and the deputy sheriff says, Sheriff, I found the dead woman. What do you mean? Well, this looks just like her. We thought she was dead. She thought that was her in the morgue. Well, they found out not quite. So anyway, we go back to Belize, and she has to do her washing with a wooden scrub board. Now, folks, you won't have to do something like that, but she did, and she was the first woman commodity broker making anywhere from 80 to 100,000 a year, and she came with me. Now, that's an act of love that you don't find many places.
I'm thinking that's an act of love for sure. So when you came to Belize, were you planning to stay and live?
Oh yeah, I had a half interest in a wooden house next to Ramones Village, and it was a termite-eaten house. It was built in 1956 by the Hammonds, who also had Ramones, which Jerry and I later bought, and then we later sold because the guy we were building the little casitas took off for places unknown in South America, and so we had to sell them empty to Richard Hedrick and go our way. But the 90-foot lot I have today.
I'm going to stop you right there because we've got more questions for you. We've got to take a break.
Tell the lady I could use one more.
We're going to take a short break here. I'm your host, Macarena Rose, and you're listening to the Overseas Radio Network.